the colour bit will be a revision of basic colour mixing, and then just like to talk a little bit about sketchbooks. So we're kind of coming to the end of the watercolour project, and so being a 5-week month, I'm not going to stretch it. So yeah, next week will be the start of a new project.
What is it next week? Do you know?
Anybody? I think it is, isn't it? I think it's.
What is it? Collage?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's moving towards collage and that direction. I've forgotten. I'll have a look, but I'll have that planned out by next week.
You want to start right now?
I only think about a week ahead. It is down though. It is all planned out. No, I don't think it is. No. But feel free to do portrait interpretation, whatever it's been. Abstract portraits. Acrylics? What, painting with acrylics?
Yeah.
We can use some acrylics in it, yeah. And I think that would be quite a good one, good use of acrylic. If it is looking towards abstraction, acrylics would work quite well with that. And we've done quite a bit of oils, now done quite a bit of watercolour, so it's nice to do a little bit of all the different things. Okay, so sketchbooks. So just want to generally encourage people to keep a sketchbook, and it's something I've really done all my life, on and off. Not all the time, but I have, and certainly over the last 20 odd years, I've usually filled 1 or 2 of these a year, maybe 3 or 4 sometimes. So I brought a selection in just to show you. This is probably one of the older ones, so that's when, about 20 years old, when needed was a little one. So that kind of, so that's that one. I used to like those sketchbooks. I quite like that shape and size for a while. That's quite good. And then there's the white ones. I quite like ring-bound sketchbooks, so these I find are quite good because you can just sort of hold them like that, whereas the ones that just open up, you've effectively got a book. They work quite nicely for a smaller sketchbook, but for the bigger ones I prefer the ring-bound sketchbooks. A lot of my sketching is just when I'm out and about, so it needs to be fairly portable and quite, something I can carry around. This particular one is quite a lightweight one. It's not very thick paper, and so this sort of thing is good, particularly if you're doing a lot of travelling. So actually, this is one I took to Portugal. So some of these are sketches in Portugal. That was on a ferry. So that I quite like. This is another white one, but again thicker, heavier paper, bigger sketchbook. So that's quite nice, but obviously more to carry around. I've used these for quite a long time now, probably 10 or 15 years, and I still like these brown paper sketchbooks. They're quite a rough paper, so it's not like watercolour paper. It's a bit like scrapbooks really, but I quite like these for quick sketches, and most of my sketches are ink and pastel, as I mentioned last week. So they are quite a nice sketchbook. I can get a lot of these I buy from a manufacturer called C White, and C White sketchbooks I've been using since I was at college. They used to sell them at the college shop, and so I've kind of been using these for nearly 40 years on and off. So if anybody's interested in buying sketchbooks, I can get sketchbooks at wholesale prices for you. So I can bring the catalogue in and we can order some stuff. So that's the brown one. The other ones I tend to use are these like pocket size ones. So these are nice if I'm out and about and just going for a walk and I don't want to carry a bag, so these will fit in my pocket. But I just put a few pens in the pocket, and that's this was one that was actually given me a paint out competition. But I've been using those, and this is a pretty old one. This one started when I was a student, so that was one of my friends. I think it's when I was in Spain, one of my friends, so I was got back in the 1980s. This one is quite thicker paper, and it's either watercolour paper or something nearly as good as watercolour. And these are quite nice. I think you can buy sketchbooks called moleskin sketchbooks, and these are really copying that design. So they kind of got rounded corners and these little elastic bands to stop the pages flapping around. So they're a nice sketchbook. So this one's I've not used it tons, but again, it's another pocket one. The ink sketches, and I've kept it more for ink sketches and a bit of watercolour. So that's another nice little one. So I don't tend to go much bigger than these ones. A4 is about as big as I go. That obviously a square one. You could go square shapes if you wanted to. The other one I've got here is a little black. Experimenting with black paper, that could be quite interesting, or toned, deep toned paper. So for me, it's something to sort of play around with. It's somewhere to experiment. I don't worry at all about sketchbooks. Some of them are very scribbly and messy, and then some of them I've spent an hour or two carefully drawing something out. So, and then have you got? I think you've got some sketchbooks with you. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's good.
Years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, it's if anybody wanted to do a little bit of sketching outdoors, we could just sit out here or around the windmill or something like that. Nice day today. So that's a little bit on sketchbooks. The other thing I wanted to revise is colour mixing. So this is something that I tend to go over every year at some point, and for some people, I've still got students that have been with me a long time, and they still sort of struggle on the basics of colour mixing, which to me is surprising. That looks a nice little sketchbook, doesn't it? Yeah. Nice, yeah. This was like a handmade one. So that's one you can get. You can sort of make. You can make sketchbooks. That's the other thing. That's on the time. So yeah, colour mixing. I use this particular colour wheel when I'm teaching colour mixing, and that comes out of this book here, Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green. So this was a book that I think was probably written in the 80s or the 90s. It wasn't around when I was at art school, I know. And when I first started teaching, I had a read of this, and I found it quite useful because it to me was a slightly simpler way of thinking about colour mixing than what I'd been taught. I've been taught with the idea of that some colours are what they call warm colours and some colours are cooler colours, which sometimes that's obvious, but sometimes it's not so difficult to decide which is a warmer red or which is a cooler red and things like that. So this I found simpler because we all know about, I think hopefully we all know about primary colours. So primary colours are colours that are just there. You can't really mix a yellow, you can't mix a blue or a red. They are just what they are. You can mix oranges, purples and greens, so they're what we call the secondary colours, but the primaries are just there. And this particular colour wheel idea is that the colour that you've got what some people call split primaries. You've got primaries that with each of these primaries, you've got, so with yellows, reds and blues, you've got yellows that tend to be slightly greeny, got a slightly greeny tinge. And we've also got yellows that have got a slightly orangey tinge. Same with the reds, you've got slightly orangey reds, slightly purply reds. You've got slightly purply blues and slightly green blues. So if you can get into that way of thinking about colour, that all the primary colours will have a slight bias towards one of these secondaries, it's I think, a very useful way of thinking about colour. From that, you can make colour charts. So with this one, I started with lemon yellow, which is greeny yellow, and then went for cerulean blue, which is a greeny blue. And that will give you the brightest range of greens you could achieve. So if you start with just a little bit of yellow, and mostly yellow, and just a tiniest bit of blue on your brush, and then progressively add blue, and then the last bit is just blue on its own, you'll see the whole range of bright greens that you could mix. Also, you can also mix greens using the other yellow and the other blue, but you'll get a much darker, much duller, less intense range. So that's this range here. So cadmium yellow or an orangey yellow and a purpley blue will give you a much kind of softer, deeper range of greens, perhaps more like the summer greens. late summer greens that you'd see. So that's one way of mixing greens. You can also mix other colours in. Well, you could use all those to mix greens, but you could even have a tiny bit of red in there as well. And that would make a much deeper, darker green, maybe slightly going towards brown. Same applies to purples, and the same applies to oranges. So your brightest range of purples, use purpley red and purpley blue. Dullest range of purples, which is the use the orangey red and the green blue. And you'll notice that that's quite a strong purple, but here it's more like brown. So if you wanted to mix a brown, that's what you need. So these are great little charts to create a set of these for yourself. And if you haven't done that and you're struggling with paint mixing, colour mixing, you know, that would be my first sort of thing to encourage you to do.
How close could you get to black?
Black. So the darkest you'll get is a little bit of all of them, really, a little bit. So I would mix so this is like a dark red,
yeah,
or maybe a crimson, something like that. Dark blue. So I'll add a little bit of dark blue. And so that gets me something like a dark purple. And then I just need something a little bit, not too much yellow, a little light there, but probably try a little bit of that. And it's not going to be black, but that'll be as dark as I can achieve. So that'll be something like that. So that's just mixing those primers. That's as dark as
all three of them, really.
Yeah, just all three. So it's more like a darkish purple, really. Could try a tiny bit. But that would be the thing to do. Perhaps, I mean, obviously I've got lots of other colours on the palette, and they're all really useful. But if you are just starting out with colour mixing, maybe do a few paintings just with these and see how far you can get. Certainly with oil paints, I find that if I use those and a brown, I can get quite dark. So if I have a little bit brown, this brown isn't particularly dark. But a bit of that. I think that's going to get me a little bit darker. Yeah, that's a bit darker still than what I achieved there.
That's why. Sorry, that's what I did last week. I didn't have black. So.
Yeah. I do use black paint now, but for years I didn't. For probably about 25, 30 years, I just used colours. The difficulty with black is unless you really know what you're doing, you can really deaden the look of the colour. So if you can, mix all your greys out of colours rather than adding black to them. So that would be achieving darks. I mean, I was thinking perhaps, you could just, have a look at a picture like this and just think, well, how would I get maybe this green here? So perhaps a little bit of, it's quite a strong green, quite a bluey green, so perhaps a little bit of cerulean there. I've got both cadmium yellow and lemon here. But that's, you can get quite a nice strong green with that. Could go a little bit darker if wanted. A bit of lemon to that. Might have to get darker. Yeah, so that would be, green here. If I wanted something a little bit lighter, maybe more yellow, and just a tiny bit of the blue. And lots of water with this watercolour. So it'll get me a light yellow like some of these here. Just try. Sort of, if I use something like ultramarine blue and one of these yellows, I should get, that would immediately gives me a much darker green. So that's a much darker, rich green. And then if I wanted to add a little bit of red into that, some sort, that will start to go towards brown. So, it's quite good to experiment with a little bit, 2 or 3 colours, or 3 or 4 colours. So that's probably, would be my, you know, what I'd encourage you to do if you're struggling with a bit of colour mixing. Anybody got any questions or?
How about pink?
Pink. So a bright pink. Well, look, you could use. So the watercolour, just really, this is cadmium red, so that'll give you a very pale sort of pink. If I used something like, well, this is magenta, which is a very, that'll give you a really nice, brightish sort of pink, something like that. So magenta is more of a purpley red, cadmium red, more of a kind of orangey red. So it depends what kind of pink you want, really. So we can do a little bit of both mixed together, something in between. And the water is just lightening that, or you can add white if you want to add white, so a bit of white to it. You get a more opaque white if we do. So last week we talked about gouache, so we wanted it a little more opaque, a little bit of white mixed in.
Grey.
Grey, yeah. So for me the easiest is brown and blue. But let's try and do it with just the colour, the primary colour. So blue, sun red, which I've just got there. So that's quite a bluey, lilac-y colour. But if I had a bit of yellow of some sort, that should start to go grey. Yeah, that's gone grey. Yeah. So grey is beige.
So was those three colours again?
Sorry?
What, you put a touch of white into what was it?
That one had white in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one with white. And then I've just used blue, red, and a little bit of yellow to make it grey.
But never thought of that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it. It's good. It's a good one. You know, just try and mix, and obviously the different blues you've got. You know, they'll either be green blues or purple blues. Most will be greeny blues. So that one there I've put down is cerulean, but this one is another greeny blue. As you can see, that is something like phthalo blue or Prussian blue, very, very greeny blue. So lots of the blues are greeny blues, and then if I mix that with the yellow, you know, that would make quite a strong, rich green. That goes quite strong, quite dark. So sometimes if you're looking at the palette like that, it's difficult to say which ones are the green blues and which are the purple blues. But as soon as you mix them and realise it's going to make a really bright green, that will tell you that one is a green blue. So if you wanted, I've got lots of blanks, and you could just try out the colours, you know, try and work out what your colours are. So if anybody wants one of these, you can fill these in yourself. If you haven't got one already, or I know a lot of you will have done this in previous years. But as I say, that's a really good exercise. And then just making the colour charts is a really good exercise. You could do that in watercolour as well. It doesn't have to be. These ones are acrylics. I couldn't find one. I've got some watercolour ones somewhere, but I don't know where. But yeah, that's it. It's quite a good exercise. All good? Yep. Good. Right, okay. Yeah, so I think next month is something looking towards abstraction. So look out on the email, and I'll have something planned out by next week for the next 4 weeks. Okay. Right, I'll leave these there.